Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Lisa Van Dusen, and I'm the Chief Relationship Officer at SV2, Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund. I think I know most of you, not all of you, and it's a really wonderful, diverse group here gathered tonight. So we are in for a treat with this learning session about impact investing action leaders, and they are dispersed amongst you right now, with the exception of Adam up here, who's going to be starting out. So anyway, I think we're really in for a treat and maybe some tweets also. Part of this will be your good questions and your curiosity. So for those of you who are not familiar with SV2, just wanted to let you know that we are a community of more than 200 individuals who have pooled their resources, financial and otherwise, and to learn about effective giving and to invest in both innovative nonprofits and social enterprises, promising social enterprises. And tonight we are more focused on that social enterprise side of our work. So we have a really wonderful lineup of people who Lisa Jones, to my right, is going to introduce soon. So I wanted to start by introducing the co-leaders, the three partners who are leading our very lively impact investing efforts. So I'll start with Lisa Jones, to my right. Lisa's also a board member, and Bill Brownell, who is one of the three, and is also our board chair, and Tony Stainer, who is also on our board. They are hardworking and really creative and enterprising in this work. So for those of you who don't know about our working group and what's been going on, particularly in the last year, I wanted to share a little bit of background about SV2's impact investing work. So first, if you are a working group member, can you raise your hand? And if you're too highly concentrated, like, okay, I think we've got somebody at every table, that's great. So backing up a couple of years, SV2 was doing a strategic planning process, and we decided to really look at how we wanted to diversify the ways that we have an impact. And impact investing came up again and again, and at one point we thought we might just be talking about it, learning about it, and in fact, one of our partners, Paul Brest, said, you really need to put money on the table and get in the game for real. And we did that. We did that after a few learning sessions and bringing some folks in, including one of Robyn's colleagues at Omidyar, Lauren Brooker-Allen. And since then, fast forward, we started in the fall of 2015 with a pretty large group figuring out how to make investments through the lens of an investment thesis. And we made three $25,000 investments in companies, early stage companies, Nepris, Learning Genie, and PastureMap, 2 education and 1 in the climate ag tech realm. I urge you to go to our website to learn more about them. And then this year, we really kind of stood back and said, how might we reconfigure? And we developed a working group and then continued with learning sessions such as these. So we've made 2 investments thus far this year. The first one is Learners Guild, and the second is Open Invest. And you will hear more from Josh Levin from Open Invest tonight. So he is a very fresh in the fold impact investment of SV2. So in parallel, we've been having learning sessions so that anybody, no matter if you don't know what the definition of impact investing is, and there is some discussion on that, but the way we've defined it is it's something where you have a hope of both a financial and a social return on an investment. And I'll leave it at that because you'll see it's very nuanced. Last fall, a session that Tony Stainer helped organize was Roadmap to Socially Responsible Investing, Competitive Returns in Public Markets. That's ending in a question mark. And our working group is continuing along, and next week on Wednesday in the midday we have another session, and people from SV2 are joining that on an ongoing basis, some as auditors and some as actual working group members, which means doing some work.
Welcome everyone, I'm Lisa Jones and I'm with SV2, I'm a partner. I want to make a comment about the working group before we get started. Lisa asked them to raise their hands. Yeah. I just want to note that this group has really done tremendous work this year. They've really been amazing getting hands-on and finding and evaluating good deals, good investment possibilities for SV2. And it's really been a joy being part of this group. So I actually want to give a hand to the working group members because they've done such a good job. And I will also say that consistent with the field, we've been figuring things out as we go along, but we've been having a lot of fun doing it. So it's been fun. The program tonight is designed to first present some research and frameworks in the impact investing field. And then during the second part of the evening, this group is going to have the opportunity to hear about some impact investments, some innovative things that are happening in impact investing, and actually apply some of the research and frameworks that you're hearing in the first part of the meeting. So that's kind of the overall structure of the evening. Omidyar Network and Toniic have taken thought and action leadership positions in this field. And we're so pleased that they've agreed to generously share some of their latest thinking in this work. It's a great opportunity for us tonight. And also thanks to Lisa and Tony for inviting them. So you're going to hear some frameworks and a T100 report. And these are actually relatively new, even for those of us who are in the impact investing working group. I think that they're going to be very useful for all of us, though, because they kind of help to cogently capture issues that we are constantly discussing and grappling with as we talk about investment opportunities. At the end of the night, the hope is that everyone will have a better understanding of the types of issues that we discuss as we look at investment opportunities, and that you'll have new tools and a good sense of how you might apply them in your own thinking or in helping SV2 make impact investment decisions. We're going to kick off the first part of the evening with presentations by Bendell, the CEO of Toniic, and Robynn Steffen, Senior Manager of Impact Investing at Omidyar Network. And so I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis of those two organizations. They both do a lot, and there's no way to capture it, but Toniic is a global network of impact investors. And one of the important initiatives that Toniic has started is called the T100. And the T100 is a group of impact investors who have committed to taking their portfolios and moving them to 100% impact. Furthermore, those investors have agreed to share what they're doing. And so there are going to be several reports coming out of this work, and the first of the reports came out on the T100 in December. And I have to point out that Tony Stainer, our partner, is one of these T100 investors. So if you want to know what Tony's doing, he's available to talk. Omidyar is really difficult to talk about because the range of what they do is so incredibly vast. It's a global philanthropic investment firm. It supports entrepreneurs, impact funds, and leads collaborations in a huge array of areas that include areas like digital identity, education, financial inclusion, government and citizen engagement, market building, property rights, and many more. And they also do quite a bit of work in field building, which is Robynn's expertise. So looking forward to hearing from both of you. We're going to ask that you hold questions until after both Adam and Robynn have presented, and then we'll have some open discussion time. I also want to point out that I'm not going to read the detailed bios for Adam and Robynn. You have them on your table. So all I'm going to do is present a fun fact. This is kind of an SV2 tradition. I'll begin with Adam because he's going to speak first. The fun fact for Adam. Adam lives in San Francisco with his wife Tracy and two tiny dogs, Daisy and Nikki, where he resides at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy. So with that, I'd like to welcome Adam Bendell, CEO of Toniic.
Thank you. So this is my first exposure to SV2. We have friends in common, and thank you, Tony, for arranging this and inviting us to speak. I am very impressed with how things run around here, I must say. You guys have Lisa squared, and it's really something else. The depth of preparation for this is quite impressive, so I hope I can live up to everything that I'm supposed to deliver for you tonight. And I also want to point out that I'm joined by my colleague, Christine Siegel. Christine, which is special tonight because Christine is actually the manager of the T100 project. So she knows more about it than I'll ever know. And if you have any questions about the report and the detail that goes beneath this, please ask Christine about it. The report is available actually on our website for free. There are postcards here where you can see, you can get the URL. I don't know, you have a printed copy or two, so we can auction those off for a good cause this evening. So a little bit about Toniic just to start, which is, as Lisa said, we're a global action network for impact investors. We're a little more than half of our members are in the United States and the rest are in Europe and around the world. We have sort of two halves of our membership. One is the at-large membership, the general Toniic membership, which is what you might think of as more classic impact investors, folks who are devoting a portion of a portfolio to impact investing. And the other is the 100% network, who are folks who, as Lisa said, have committed to move at least one portfolio that they control entirely into impact investing. And those folks are the subject of the T100 report. We believe that values-aligned investing is an expression of personal integrity and growth. And so for Toniic members, investing is a natural extension of who they are. They're keen to sort of explore, am I living in integrity? Do my investments reflect who I am? And so they do not generally think of investing as this kind of separate thing from grant-making, philanthropy, or how they live their lives. They think about those as an integrated process. And I think you will see that as you sort of, you wonder what inspires people like this to share their very private personal investments with the world. Well, one thing is that we anonymize and aggregate the data, but they're also very motivated to inspire people who may not be impact investors yet to check it out. So the 100% Impact Network is principal level investors who've committed 100% impact in a portfolio, are willing to share. Collectively, that's about $4 billion of committed capital. So the T100 project is something that we undertook because of this kind of clear sense that there is a need for evidence that impact investing can deliver both, as someone said, both impact, social or environmental impact, and financial returns. Traditional investors are skeptical. I was actually surprised at the words that came around, that either you guys were being very polite or you were a less skeptical audience than most, because many people, when they think about impact investing, have, let's just say more quizzical kinds of words to use than some of the ones I heard here. So it feels like a friendly audience. And that's fantastic, but we are in part about answering the questions of those who are more skeptical about impact investing and hew more to the traditional view that you ought to make as much money as you can when you're making money, and then you'll have more to give away. And impact investors look at it differently. As I said, Toniic members really see their investments as an extension of themselves. So we're trying to demonstrate to those who aren't yet committed impact investors that this is a viable way to invest, and to provide data also to the academic research community so that both practice and academia can support one another in the growth of this movement. Our vision for the T100 project is that it be a longitudinal study. We, as Lisa said, launched last year. We intend it to run for at least 5 years, tracking the progress of these 100% investors as they move their portfolios from traditional to 100% impact. And we track that both quantitatively in ways that I'll share the highlights of with you today, qualitatively by interviewing them and asking about their journeys, because this is very much a kind of personal journey for most of our members as well. Those two things reinforce one another, because people are motivated. That's why I use the word joyful, right? People are motivated by impact investing because they find this new sort of liveliness in investing that is a source of great joy and satisfaction. But they are also seeking financial returns. That's the difference between impact investing and philanthropy. And so how those things fit together may, we hope, contribute to a postmodern portfolio theory, a way of thinking about social or environmental impacts of our investment as integral to the investments themselves, just as integral as financial return. That's not Christine or me, but that's the cover of the launch report. So let's dig in a little bit and talk about what a 100% portfolio looks like. First of all, by asset class. So you'll see that it's a diversified portfolio. That's the first thing to notice here, right? Fixed income, public equity, relatively small allocation of hedge funds, either because there is not sufficient impactful hedge fund product, or in some cases because impact investors are skeptical of hedge funds as not based in the real economy, but more on financial engineering. We don't know the answers to why of all of this yet. In some ways, the data from our first report gives us a whole lot of interesting questions to go chase. A somewhat larger allocation to private equity than you might see in a non-impact portfolio, but still plenty of public equity, so essentially a diversified portfolio. And this is asset allocation by entity type. So the three main types of investors in Toniic, or members of Toniic, are family offices, foundations, and individuals. We break this out separately to show that those different groups actually have different asset allocations in aggregate. With more allocations to public equities by foundations, and slightly more allocations to real assets by individuals, among other things. So what about the progress towards 100% impact? Because no one came out of the womb a 100%er, right? Everyone came initially as a traditional investor, and they're in the process of moving to 100% impact. So we use these terms that we didn't invent, but that we embrace. They really come from the GIN and the Global Impact Investing Network and other standard makers. And those terms are, well, first of all, non-impact is probably not a term, but it's what we mean by a traditional investment that pays no attention to the social or environmental impacts. And our members have those kinds of investments in their portfolio. They are united in a desire to see this gray bar shrink over time, but that's not a thing you can do overnight. Sometimes you're in private equity investments that are illiquid. You've got to wait, for some number of years to be able to move those assets. And when you move them, you're trying to move into greater and greater impact. The kind of baseline level is sustainable investing, also known as SRI, or socially responsible investing. That's essentially a negative screen to take out things in the portfolio you don't like. The next level up is responsible investing, or ESG, environmental, social, and governance screen. The difference between SRI and ESG is that ESG is not just negative screening, it's also a positive screen. It's looking for companies that are well run, that are addressing key social issues or environmental issues that the world will address, and it is, and they're well run because they have high governance. Elizabeth, you tripped me up. So that's responsible. And then the largest category, at least in our sample of 50 plus portfolios, is thematic. And a thematic impact investment is, by this definition, the deepest, the most intentional. The one that is aligned with your impact themes and helps to express those themes through your portfolio. And so our members will be seeking over time to move their investments, if they're in non-impact, up through the chain. Probably skipping SRI, frankly, at this stage, moving straight to ESG or ESG plus for public equities, and really aiming for thematic investments that are aligned with their mission. We're investing across all different kinds of sectors or beneficiary types. These are broad categories, and we realize they're too broad, so we're refining them this year using the UN Sustainable Development Goals. How many people are familiar with this? Have you seen this one? Wow! That's cool. So the great thing about the SDGs is that it's not just for impact investing, it's a framework that is being used broadly by governments, NGOs, corporates in their corporate social responsibility programs. So we see as impact investors an opportunity to align our efforts to this much broader and bigger pool of capital. So to do that, we at Toniic have created a new SDG-aligned impact framework, which are out on the tables, and if you don't have one, they're here. On the right-hand side are 55 very specific impact themes that are aligned to the SDGs. And it's a way for us to do two things that we needed to do. One is connect members who are working on a very particular issue with other members who are working on that same issue for co-investment or learning. And the other is to connect them with investment opportunities, which is a big part of what we do at Toniic. And so we found that if you look at that prior slide, environment is just too broad as a way to try to get people who are working on the same issue together. So we have this much more specific framework. We put this up on the web. It's a public good, and we're inviting other organizations to use it, and they're getting a very warm reception. This will be built into the next version of the T100 project or report as we go forward. We also took all of the investments that were in the portfolios of these investors like Tony and put them in the Toniic directory with our investors' permission. This consists of about 1,100 investments that our members have made that they consider to be impact investments across all asset classes, geographies, liquidity constraints, and you and anyone in the public can go to the public version of this on our website and search for investments filtering along these various dimensions. Toniic members get a better version of the directory that's got more information, and they can find out who actually made the investment. But we want this to be a public good, at least at the more general level. Okay, so financial return expectations on everybody's mind, no doubt. Family, this is what people's expectations were. Family offices, foundations, and individuals, with the green being those seeking market rate returns and blue being sub-market rates. So I don't need to speak to this slide. You can see what our members are aiming for. Very broad, 83% of them aiming for market rate returns. And coincidentally, the same number, 83% of them said they met or exceeded those financial return objectives. This is that broken down by type of investor. Wow, I sped ahead and I managed it. When Robynn comes up, she's going to talk to you about the returns continuum. I shouldn't show you this slide. This is her slide to do. And then I'll come back and talk about how these two frameworks fit together. Robynn?
Adam, do you want to just do my presentation?
I don't.
And actually, I'm going to step in here for a minute just to give you a fun fact about Robynn. Robynn grew up on a family farm in Iowa where she built goats and collected chicken eggs before school.
Milked goats, did you say?
Yes.
Yes. Indeed. All right. So hi, everyone. Robynn, Steffen. I'm at Omidyar Network. So I'm going to tell you about this tool that we use internally to think about our financial returns that we're expecting from different investments that we make. But in order to understand how we think about that, you have to know a little bit about what we do. So Lisa gave you a little bit of a preview. I'm just going to fill in a few more details that I think are important for this conversation. So she mentioned that we're a philanthropic investment firm. So what that means is that we are a little bit of an unusual animal. We have both a foundation and also an LLC under the same roof. And that gives us really flexible capital. So it means that we can do everything from investment seeking, risk-adjusted market rate returns, all the way to grants to nonprofits and everything in between. So that's part of the reason why we've been thinking deeply about this question. And so I'll get to that in just a moment. True to our roots here in Silicon Valley, we do most of our investments are early stage equity investments. We actually have a lot of flexibility. We can do a number of different things, but knowing that we come in around Series A, very early stages, is useful in terms of knowing some of the questions that we have as we think about impact projecting at both the firm and the market level. And I think I'll stop there for now so we can dig into the substance. So as I mentioned, we have this extremely flexible capital. And so because of that, we have to think really carefully about when we might be willing to accept below market returns in service of achieving a specific impact. And so we have gone through our own journey internally in discussions and robust debate that has led to this tool that we use to help us think about that question in the context of specific investments, and want to share that with you all tonight, knowing that it's not going to be the tool that everyone uses, but hopefully will spark some really interesting discussion, and then we'll get to hear more about how you guys think about this question as well. So big picture, we have a very basic framework to keep things simple. We call our investment categories A, B, and C. And that is a returns continuum framework from commercial returns on one end to grants on the other. So why is this an interesting place to start just from a visual? Well, it's because actually often when we come and we have these conversations, we hear many people say that impact investments always have a trade-off. You can never get both financial returns and transformational impact in the same investment. And other people say, no, they've got it all wrong. Impact investing is only those investments where you have both financial returns and impact, and there's never a trade-off. And so if you ask us that question, we say, actually, well, when we look back over our last 12 years and our $1 billion in investments so far, it turns out it depends. So what does that look like? So on the one hand, you see in the commercial investments, these are investments where you have the impact that is embedded in the core business model of the firm, and it is able to tap commercial markets to be able to scale. So we break those down into two subcategories. So A1 investments, these are investments where we expect strong financial returns, and we're actually in the deal with commercial investors. So given that we do early stage, typically that's going to be commercial VC firms. And so we call them market validated, because not only do we have the expectation for strong financial returns in the deal, but we have a fellow investor who comes into the deal at that stage who also is seeking those commercial returns. The A2 category is for those investments where we expect to have strong financial returns from the deal, but there aren't actually other commercial investors that are in the deal alongside us at that moment. So this typically happens in emerging markets that have much more nascent VC ecosystems. And in these instances, we often feel that we have a little bit more visibility into either the market or the entrepreneur or the sector because of our local presence and our work in that space that allows us to have a better sense of what the actual financial returns will be than maybe keeping other more commercial investors out of the deal. But where we expect at the end of the day, we will see risk-adjusted commercial returns. So that's category A. As you move to category B, this is a place where we see expecting below risk-adjusted market rate returns. And it falls again into two different categories that is distinguished by the level of returns that we plan to see, with B1 being positive, strong, absolute returns, but not risk-adjusted, and B2 being an example of investments where we're really looking at capital preservation or maybe something a little bit better than that. And then far to the left, you see, as you move along the continuum, you actually move from our impact investments to our grants, where we're not expecting to have financial return, but we still distinguish in terms of the level of sustainability. So some of the nonprofits that we give grants to actually have a lot of earned income revenue and are less dependent on grants. And there are some things that we do that absolutely just are purely 100% public good that need to be fully philanthropically funded, and so have very little earned income revenue. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on C today because we're here to talk about impact investments, so we're going to focus mostly on A and B, but happy to answer questions that people have if that's of interest as well. So just a couple more notes until before we get into some of the details here. Across this entire returns continuum, impact is at the core. So we never do any investments at Omidyar network that aren't fundamentally about impact. We have a minimum threshold to be able to even get to this conversation. And that minimum threshold is that we believe that the firm is able to positively impact at least 100,000 lives or more. And so how do we think about making decisions that fall into these different buckets? So we already talked about that there's this minimum baseline in terms of there being a threshold for impact across all the categories. So the key to note here is that as we loosen the constraints for financial return, we raise the bar in terms of the level of market level impact that we're looking for. So here I want to distinguish between two things. We often, as we're thinking about impact investments, will think about direct impact, right? So you, for example, Lisa talked earlier about some of the investments that the working group has made. And so you might think about, for example, the number of children that are reached, for example, as you think about the direct impact of a particular firm. So that is distinct from talking about market level impact. So why do we care about market level impact? Well, our perspective is that if you invest thinking from a perspective of firm level impact, a particular firm might be able to influence the lives of thousands or maybe even millions of people. But if you're actually able to spark an entire new sector with many firms who are competing with products that improve the lives of the people of the group that you care about, you can actually think about impacting hundreds of millions of people through seeding and helping flourish an entire sector. So what does that look like? Well, there's a couple pieces that I want to talk through in terms of how we could affect market level impact through the investments that we make. Before I do that, I just want to note that as we think about our investment hypotheses, we actually use both the investments and the grants to achieve market level impact together. So for example, Lisa mentioned that one of the areas that we invest in is in financial inclusion. So in our financial inclusion investments, we both invest in early stage startups that have new business models that are delivering financial services to low-income people in emerging markets at an incredibly low cost. We also recognize that those entrepreneurs who are delivering those breakthrough innovative services are facing a number of barriers because of the fact that not only is their business new, but their entire sector is new. And so they have needs that they face as they're building their business that are about this very nascent sector. And so not only do we invest in the entrepreneur, but we also invest, first in the financial inclusion context, we'll invest in entrepreneurs like Haga or Ruma in Nigeria and Indonesia, but we also invest in GSMA, which is helping to create a set of enabling policy frameworks that will help all of the entrepreneurs who are trying to deliver these types of new innovative business models. We'll also provide a grant to a group like CGAP, which is doing some of the cutting edge research to help this new sector of financial inclusion businesses serving low-income populations to flourish. So we take an approach that mixes both our investments and our grants to be able to achieve a sector level impact, but we also think about that market level impact when we're making our for-profit investments. And so that's the piece that I want to come to here. And here, there's 3 different ways that we can achieve market level impact. So the first I've referred to a little bit, but I want to hit on it directly. So this is the idea of pioneering a new model for a new market. So who in here has heard of D-Light? Everyone, great. So as you know, D-Light started out many years ago with doing solar lanterns, and now they've moved on to solar home systems. They were one of the first companies that was starting to provide renewable energy to very low-income populations in emerging markets. After D-Light, you've had actually this explosion, especially in East Africa, of a number of companies who have followed on them to deliver solar home systems. So you now have, between Off-Grid Electric and Mcopa and others, hundreds of thousands of solar home systems that are being sold every month in Africa. And D-Light was the first. They were there before anyone else. And so we expect a nice return from D-Light, but we know that even if that doesn't happen, that we've had this very positive impact, not just by what the firm has done in terms of the products that they've delivered to their customers, but by sparking this entire sector, which now is able to deliver renewable energy to these very low-income customers at a cost that's below that of kerosene. And were it not for D-Light, that sector may have taken 4 or 5 more years to actually come to the point where it is now, touching the number of customers and lives that it touches. So that's example one, which is a firm that pioneers a brand new business model and shows a sector that other firms can jump into. The second is this idea of providing industry infrastructure. So I talked previously about, for example, CGAP, which does this cutting edge research, and it does it from a public good perspective. But sometimes the infrastructure can be achieved through sustainable for-profit models. So an example here is MFX. MFX basically provides exotic currency hedging in the microfinance market, so it helps to reduce some of the risk. And we were one of the first investors that came into MFX. At the time, we looked at it and we said, this is probably 2 to 3% returns, right? This is not something that's going to fall into our A category, backing up to our previous map. But we actually expect it to have a huge impact in terms of on the entire microfinance sector. And in fact, it has hedged over $1 billion since 2009, which has indeed had a very big market impact on the microfinance sector writ large. So that's the second piece, which is saying, okay, is there a for-profit business model to be able to provide a basic piece of infrastructure that will affect the market? And the third is on policy. I suspect many of you have also heard of Bridge. In the same way with D-Light, I see a lot of heads shaking. So Bridge actually could fall into the first category. We actually think Bridge is doing some really exciting stuff in terms of pioneering a totally new business model to be able to deliver high quality but super affordable private education in places like Nairobi slums. But we also think that Bridge is very exemplary of another way of having market impact, which is around influencing policy. So Bridge in particular, it has influenced policy in Kenya and Uganda, and in fact has, which is a very robust policy debate about what is the role of affordable private schools in delivering a high quality education to kids in those countries. They've also engaged in a public-private partnership in Liberia and now in India as well. And we think that, we expect to have a nice return from Bridge, but we know that even if we don't, that the impact that that has had on the entire market of private affordable schools for kids in places like Kenya and Uganda is going to have a reverberation for many other firms other than just Bridge in terms of what's possible. So that's what we mean by market level impact. So I'm getting a note that we are a little bit short on time. So I want to just come back to this. This is the core piece and tie what we just talked about back into here. So we talked about this, this distinction between direct impact and market level impact. And as we talked about, every firm is expected to have that direct impact. We see huge potential for direct impact in those firms that can scale, tapping commercial capital, so the A's. And we are willing to loosen the financial constraints when it comes to those firms that we think can have outsized market level impact. Okay, so that's the basic tool. And I'm just going to end with a few thoughts. There's some examples we can come back to if people have questions. I'm going to end with just a few thoughts about some of our struggles and our hopes in developing this tool. So in terms of some of the struggles, one is that it turns out that projecting out future impact is really hard to do. And it turns out it's really hard, especially hard to do it when it comes to market level impact. And the reason is, number one, we're investing in pretty early stage companies. And so those companies may pivot in terms of their core business model. Market level impact also has a lot to do with what everybody else does in the market. And you can't always predict in advance the actions of other external actors. And so we recognize that it's hard to predict that market level impact. And because of that, we really push our investment leads as they bring things to the investment committee to articulate a testable hypothesis so that we will have a very clear idea of what we believe that route to market impact is and can be very specific about it. And that's one of the other learnings, is that if you're not really specific in articulating what you expect the market level impact to be, then market level impact can just be a fuzzy box that allows you to get away with lazy investing. And we don't think that's good for impact investing, and it's not good for anybody. From our perspective, you should only accept below market returns in very specific instances, and you should be very clear about why you're doing that. And so from our perspective, the ability to be very clear and articulate and specific about the market level impact we expect is really critical to continue to be rigorous. And then the last thing that I would note is just that this framework that I just shared with you is how we make decisions coming into the investment committee, but we've noted that it isn't always a good predictor in terms of the financial returns that we actually see. So here we have seen that in some instances, some of our B investments have actually outperformed some of our A investments. And so it is not a one-to-one correlation. So last thoughts for you, and then I'm going to turn it back over. Oops. And we're out. All right, so we'll do it from here, which is just that I wanted to come back to where we started. So this is a tool that we developed because it's helpful for us, given the flexible capital that we have, because we have to make these tough decisions about how we best deploy this capital for maximum impact in the world. And we see the huge impact you can have by scaling really successful companies. We know that many people don't have this type of flexible capital, that they might be a foundation that specifically has program-related investments, that they're specifically looking to do just that catalytic below market piece of the return. We know that some funds have already raised money from their LPs promising risk-adjusted market rate returns, and that's where they're going to play on the continuum. But we think that there's a lot of people, and many of them might be in this room actually, that have some flexibility. And we'd really like to see more of the market think about both, not just one piece of the continuum, but the full returns continuum. And to play around with not only direct firm level impact, but also market level impact as they decide where they're going to play with specific investments along that continuum. And with that, I look forward to discussing with all of you your reflections on this tool, and also how you think about that hard question in your own investment committees about when you will accept below market returns in the service of impact.
Thank you, Robyn. Tony is going to come up too. We are not going to have very much time for questions. So I think maybe 3 questions at the maximum.
So who has a burning question for Robyn or Adam?
Do you want us to stand?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Linda.
So one thing I noticed on all of your, on this phenomenal framework is when you put up the slide earlier about where the money is going, they seem to be very skewed to a smaller number of categories. Like environment seemed very outsized in terms of where a lot of the impact opportunity was. So back to your earlier discussion about some of this having to do with passion, are there certain places on this framework where you have the ability to potentially be more on the A-B side because those sectors or areas more lend themselves to an A or B type of model, versus are there certain parts of these things that basically there's just not as much that's on the A to B side, but it is more on the C side when you look at it from these sectors?
I can take that as a first crack, and then I'll turn to you because I know that it's actually your data that you're referring to. So we do see that, and in particular, for example, our work on property rights happens. So we see property rights as this really big piece. Property security as being in tenure as being a really important piece of economic empowerment for low-income people in emerging markets. And it's been really, really hard for us to find a sustainable for-profit model to be able to tackle the issue of property rights, in part because it's something that usually is done by government. And so one of our examples that we didn't go into, but which is a B2 investment, is a firm called Suya, which has found or is, I should say, pioneering a sustainable business model to be able to really get at that piece of securing land tenure for these vulnerable populations. But we don't see it falling in the A category. And I am pretty confident that I can say that we don't have examples of investments in our A bucket that are property right investments. Similarly, we have a group that works on governance and citizen engagement. A lot of that work actually happens out of our C bucket, out of grants. Not all of it. There's a really booming piece of subsector around civic tech, which we think is really interesting and plays along other parts of the continuum. But yes, depending on what issue you care about, I think that you may end up playing on different parts of the continuum. But know that some sectors, for example, I think our financial inclusion is a great example of this, actually play very intentionally across the entire continuum with their impact strategy and see a lot of opportunity to do so.
I endorse Robyn's.
Megan, did you have a question?
I did. So I was going to ask, with one of the issues for VCs being the returns that they think may not be there, if you guys are doing the work and kind of showing that the returns are there and it is possible, what do you think it would take for VCs to become more dynamic in their funding and for them to hop in on more of your A-class investments?
So actually our A1 investments, we are exclusively investing alongside commercial VC.
Right.
Now,
how do we get more to do that?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing.
Well, so I think that when we play in the U.S. market, it's actually not that hard. I think we struggle with it more when we play in certain emerging markets, just because the economies often have a less developed VC landscape. So for example, we see it's much easier to do in India even than it is to do in a place like Nigeria. And I think track record is going to be a key piece of bringing more commercial VCs in, because at the end of the day, they exclusively are playing in the A1 category because of the capital that they're working with. But I do think that the track record is a big piece, which is why data from T100 will be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, just to add briefly, I think high net worth individuals and family foundations and family offices can be more flexible and nimble than institutional money.
Right.
And by doing that, like they'll, for example, they do not draw a line through first-time fund managers every time. Most institutions do. So now I'm talking about funds, not direct investments, but the analogy I think is the same. So we think that the high net worth community and foundations has a catalytic role in getting to make happen what you wish for, and we do as well.
I endorse that.
So unfortunately, I am getting a cook. But you guys will be around, so
We will.
you're available for questions.
Lisa, do I have time to show the framework or no? It sounds like-
No, but we will, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We will provide a copy book.
So we did a combination of Robyn and my
Go
thing.
ahead and let's put it up while you talk about it.
I won't talk long.
Yeah, if you're gonna talk, yeah, let's
I don't know how to do it.
It's,
Back here
there it
somewhere.
is, yeah.
And then I'm not a math guy. Somebody extra.
Like
Okay.
his deck.
That thing, yeah. So basically, this is Robyn's framework on the x-axis. Okay, the returns.
Omidyar networks.
I'm sorry, Omidyar networks framework. On the x-axis, reversed because better always has to be further out to the right, right, on an x and y axis. So grant making is actually on the left. You'll see it in a moment. And commercial returns. Getting there. And then on the y-axis is impact returns, which impact investors are thinking about all the time. So this is that framework that I presented of sustainable, responsible, and thematic, but adding that something could be neutral in terms of impact because we are looking across the whole portfolio. So a particular investment could actually be neutral, and it could actually be net negative, right? Particularly in public equities, all kinds of places where you could do things that are actually affirmatively harmful on net to the planet or its people. And so this is a way to think about where a particular investment might land on the two frameworks that we presented to you, and we've got some printed copies of these to hand out. The point that I think Robyn was making earlier is that the greater financial concession, the more compelling the expected market impact needs to be. And so that's a way to think about how these fit together. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
thank you, Tony, for moderating that section. We're going to move into the second part of the program, and as you can tell, we're kind of moving to try to keep things close to the correct timing. We're going to hear about 2 innovative impact models, and we're going to discuss them using some of the tools that you were just introduced to by Adam and Robyn. So I want to walk you through some of the papers that you should have in front of you, really just 2 pages. The first one is we're going to have discussions by table, so you can, after you hear the 2 presenters of these impact opportunities, by table, you're going to use this sheet, which has small discussion prompts on it to help guide your discussion. After, or as you were doing that, there's another sheet of paper. We love matrices. I like Adam. I like to have my graphs. So this sheet has a 2x2 matrix on it, and then it also has a table on the left. And the directions are right there, but I'm not going to read the directions, but it corresponds with the categories that Adam talked about in terms of NRS and T, Robyn's A and B categories, the no C categories, because the 2 impact investments you're going to hear about are not grants. They are both investments. And then the challenge will be to take a blue sticker for a company called Open Invest and a green one for an opportunity from Village Enterprise, and actually map them where you think they would fall if you look at a spectrum of direct impact versus market level impact. So we're really trying to take these concepts that they've just given us and apply them. So I've said all that without introducing how you're going to apply them. To do that, I'd like to introduce the next 2 speakers. One speaker is here in person. Fortunately, Josh Levin, who's co-founder of Open Invest, was healthy tonight. And so he's here with us. Open Invest is our most recent impact investee at SV2. So the fact is we have already made a decision in the working group to make this investment, but we still think it's a very interesting model for everyone here to understand and think about and discuss in the context of these tools. The other investment opportunity that you'll hear about is from Dianne Calvi of Village Enterprise. And many of you who are at SV2 will already know Village Enterprise as one of our stellar grantees. Dianne has a new investment vehicle that she's developed, and she'll be talking about that with us as well. So they're interesting and very different types of impact models, but we thought this would be a great opportunity to get this group thinking about these 2 opportunities using the kind of thinking that Toniic and Omidyar are bringing to this to the system. So we will start with Josh Levin, co-founder of Open Invest.
All right, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here. This is great. This is my first SV2 event, besides meeting with the investment committee, and it's just so awesome to see this crowd and the energy everybody has and the environment that you guys have created. So thank you, and thanks for having me here. Cool. So first I have some good news, which is that, well, first of all, raise your hand if you're investing in public markets right now. Okay, so I'm actually surprised there's so few of you that there are actually exceptions. But the good news, everyone who just raised your hand, you're already impact investors. It's amazing. You're investing in some of the largest, most influential, most powerful entities in the world. In fact, the most powerful entities in the world. These large companies that you're personally funding are employing hundreds of thousands of people. They're cutting down forests. They're planting forests. They're delivering the goods and services that you and your family rely on every day. And the CEOs of those companies, they work for you. They're reporting to you. And in fact, whether or not you choose to fund them and whether or not you tell your managers what to do is, I mean, you live in California, it's certainly more powerful than your presidential political ballot. So why is it so hard? I mean, this is, honestly, it's the most powerful tool you have to shape the world probably, in your lifetime. And so why is it so hard for people to use those tools? And that's what we're here to address. So let's look at the problem first. There's a lot of problems. But right now, if people want socially responsible investing in public markets, there's three main options. One is you can go out and you can research all the companies and their environmental and social and financial performance and construct your own portfolio. Very few people have the expertise and the time to be able to do that, of course. You can go out and you can buy green or SRI mutual funds. That's the traditional approach. They've been around 30, 40 years. They're great, but there's a few problems. They typically have high fees. It can range from 1 to 2% annual expense ratios. And the performance can be hit or miss. And then I think probably the biggest problem is as soon as you care about more than one thing, what do? Let's suppose you care about gender and the environment. So now you're going to go buy a gender lens fund, and then you're going to buy a green mutual fund, but your gender fund has a bunch of oil companies on it because they have women on the boards. So there's actually currently no way to blend the things that you care about across your assets, assuming that you are going to have a component, which most people have the majority of their assets in public markets. So we decided to design a solution. And so we're Open Invest. We came out of Y Combinator. And it's a marriage of unique backgrounds. And we're an automated online advisor that makes it easy for anybody to apply their values to their finances. So I'm going to play a short video which could do it better than I can.
We all do our part to try and make the world a better place, with our friends, our family, and anywhere in between. But do you ever wonder where your money goes when you're asleep? With primitive ways of investing, you may be personally funding business practices that violate your values. That doesn't make much sense, does it? Especially when research has shown that more responsible companies, the kind you'd rather support, tend to perform the same or better than their peers. I know what you're thinking. Isn't investing complicated? Open Invest makes sustainable investing simple. Answer a few questions about your finances and what you care about, and in under 5 minutes, we'll set up your optimal portfolio. Easy, right? And for the first time ever, as you monitor your finances, you can also see how you're affecting the world. But that's not all. When an investable company does something important, we'll let you know. Include or exclude them with a swipe, share with others, and send a clear message to management. See what actions others are taking, and join or create a movement. In the background, Open Invest's advanced technology ensures your portfolio always remains diversified, optimized, and is designed to track the performance of the market. Your information is always kept safe. Investing should be honest and easy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. With Open Invest, you can plan for your future, shape the world, and do well as companies do good. Together, we're making history. Come join us today.
Okay, so as you can see, it's designed to make investing in public markets, your retirement portfolio, your IRAs, your personal investing, simple for anyone to apply their values. But the big difference is for us, actually, let me point out why now. So socially responsible investing has been growing by more than $1 trillion per year over the last 4 or 5 years. It's going gangbusters. And it's all geared towards institutional assets right now, towards mostly institutional buyers. Whereas 70% of individuals in America say they want to invest in companies that align with their values. And there's basically no good solutions for them right now, which is why we designed this. Now, I grabbed this from our old pitch deck, but the big differences for us, just going over here, is the deep level of granularity to people's particular values, and the full transparency into what you own, the ability to take action in real time, which you saw in the video, the real-time impact metrics, you can not just monitor your financial performance, but your social, environmental performance, and then the ability to engage in shareholder activism. The way this is possible is the technology, and this is the real disruption. We're not putting people into funds. We directly purchase the underlying basket of equities that would be in, say, like a target date retirement fund or a broad market fund. And our algorithms manage that basket. And so in this example, the Volkswagen emission scandal, we send you an alert. If you don't want to be a Volkswagen, this is not stock picking. We pull out VW, we instantly break apart your portfolio, and then we tweak all the holdings that are correlated with VW in order to restore you to a beta 1 with the market. Some of you do finance, some of you don't, but to keep you diversified and tracking the benchmark. So it's the first time that anyone can be an activist investor while their portfolio always stays passive. And this is how we free up normal people to join movements, to create movements, and create a whole new battlefront for activism. Because that's the real problem right now. It's not SRI, it's that people are looking for meaningful ways to actually make change in this world, and they're frustrated. They're frustrated about politics, they're frustrated about what they're seeing in their society, and we're going off an environmental cliff. And they're looking for what the heck can I actually do? And your assets are what you can do. And in the past, we were isolated, we didn't have transparency, we're diffuse. But the public, the general public, you guys, you own corporate America. The general public owns 70 to 80% of corporate America. And we're trying to give public markets back to the public by disintermediating from all the guys who are standing in the way on Wall Street and giving the tools so that together we can have a voice and we can take back control of the companies that we own. So that's us.
Dianne, unfortunately, is sick, but she is going to do her presentation via, I think, any meeting. So we're going to pull her up momentarily.
Can you see me?
I almost. All right, I think we're good, Dianne.
You can see me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to spin you around so you can see the group. Or
Okay.
some portion of the group.
I'm
Wave.
I'm really sorry I can't be there. I'm not feeling well at all, and I didn't want to pass this nasty bug on to anyone else, so I'm here at home. But I'm really excited to be with you, and much energy as I can convey given my current state, I'll try to do that. Hello, I'm Dianne Calvi, and I'm CEO of Village Enterprise, and I'm here to talk to you about one of the most unique and one of the most innovative investment opportunities. Not only does this investment offer a financial return on your investment of up to 15% over 2 years, it also offers the social return of solving one of the world's most pressing problems, ending extreme poverty. At Village Enterprise, we work with some of the world's poorest people in rural Africa and provide them with a sustainable path out of poverty. Every year, we provide seed capital, training, and mentoring to tens of thousands of new entrepreneurs. Most of them are women. And we want to scale up so that we can impact millions with our program. We have solid evidence that our program is one of the most cost-effective and sustainable approaches to ending extreme poverty. But the challenge that we're tackling is really huge. There are over 700 million people living in extreme poverty, close to 400 million in sub-Saharan Africa alone. Earlier, I heard mention the Sustainable Development Goals. The number one Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations and the number one goal of the World Bank is to end extreme poverty by 2030. At Village Enterprise, we believe that that is possible. And there is now really solid evidence for the Village Enterprise's graduation out of poverty approach. Many of you have heard of randomized control trials, or RCTs, the gold standard for evaluating the impact of an intervention. RCTs of our program and similar programs in 7 different countries show significant increases in income and savings and people graduating out of poverty. So how does it work? We deliver a 1-year, 5-part program that starts with very careful targeting of who are the very poorest. And then our Indigenous staff provides a year of business training, a cash transfer of $150 to start a business, ongoing mentoring, and a group-based savings program. We've also incorporated mobile technology to make it more cost-effective and scalable. So what differentiates our program from other poverty alleviation programs? First and foremost, we have solid evidence that our program delivers the impact that we say it does in terms of increases in both income and savings. Second, compared to other poverty alleviation programs that have RCT evidence, our program is extremely cost effective, costing 1/3 to 1/10 of the other programs. And finally, because our model is so cost effective and we've incorporated mobile technology, it's both highly replicable and scalable. Village Enterprise has been working with the ultra poor in rural Africa for over 30 years. And our mission hasn't really changed much during that time, but our impact has grown exponentially. Since I joined Village Enterprise in 2010, in just the last 6 years, we have started close to 20,000 small businesses and lifted 250,000 people out of poverty. And we're now embarking on a really exciting new project that will allow us to further scale our work in Kenya and Uganda, as well as provide innovative funding mechanism for further scaling up the graduation model by other organizations throughout the world, and could play a critical role in achieving the goal of ending extreme poverty. We're launching the first ever development impact bond in poverty alleviation. I have a bit of a sore throat, so I'm just gonna take a sip of water. This is an exciting opportunity to not only train 17,600 new entrepreneurs who will start 5,720 new micro enterprises and transform the lives of over 110,000 women, children, and men, but it'll also be an opportunity to pilot a new financial model that could attract hundreds of millions of dollars if successful. Village Enterprise is working with one of the innovators in results-based funding in Stiglio, and has already attracted 3 of the largest funders in international development. Village Enterprise has a commitment from Wellspring Advisors, one of the largest philanthropic advisory firms in the world, for $2 million in outcome funding, and has interest and strong interest for securing an additional $2 million from the venture capital arm of USAID and from DFID, the USAID of the UK. We've also raised $1 million of the upfront investment capital and are in the process of raising an additional $2.6 million. Before I go on, I wanted to just get a raise of hands of how many of you have heard of pay for success or results-based funding or impact bonds. Some of you have already seen this presentation, so you've already heard. So development impact bonds are an innovative financial instrument that leverages private investment to support high impact programs. An investor provides upfront financing to a nonprofit to deliver a service that should achieve a measurable outcome. In our case, an increase in consumption, income, and assets. After Village Enterprise delivers the program, an independent evaluator, in our case, IPA, evaluates and measures the success of the project. The findings of the evaluation are then reported to the outcome funder, in our case, Wellspring, DFID, and USAID, who disperse the funds to the investor based on the results achieved. In a development impact bond, impact investors take on the financial risk of expanding proven programs, not the philanthropic funders or governments. So what are some reasons to use development impact bonds? Reason number 1, it makes money more effective. By tying funding to measurable results, impact bonds reduce the risk of funding programs that don't work. Reason number 2, it allows providers to adapt to change by shifting the focus from activity to impact, that is by reimbursing results rather than receipts. Impact bonds give service providers more flexibility to do what they need to do to get results. And reason number 3, it focuses the private sector on social issues. By creating an investment opportunity that includes a financial return, impact bonds invite the private sector to participate in improving social programs and having a social impact.
I'm going to pause here, Diane, and if you can wrap up in less than a minute, then we're going to move to questions with both you and Josh.
Sure.
Okay?
So quickly, to just let you know how the investor gets paid back, the outcome funders have agreed to pay back the investors the cash transfer, which is dispersed. So 25% of the funds will be paid back upon verification that the cash has been received by the recipient. The remaining 75% of the investment and the potential return of up to 15% over 2 years will be returned to the investor when the final program evaluation evaluates the increase in consumption and assets after 1 year. The good news is that the results have already been tested and verified by our large-scale RCT, so we'll only have to replicate results that we've already achieved to ensure that the investor receives a return on their investment. So in summary, we have, In summary, we have a committed outcome funder at $2 million, very promising, almost secured outcome funding of $2 million from USA Development Innovation Funds and DFID. We have $1 million of committed investment capital from the Delta Fund and interest from SV2 and the impact investing arms of the Gates Foundation, the Montpellier Foundation, the Small Foundation, and World Vision. And we're seeking an additional $2.6 million. We believe that this is really an exciting opportunity to play an instrumental role in helping to end extreme poverty. And by participating in this first development impact bond, investors will provide the risk capital to get this important project off the ground. If successful, this innovative funding instrument could be replicated around the world and could play an important role in ending one of mankind's biggest problems, extreme poverty. Thank you.
That's a burning question.
Have you run any simulations using your tools to see what difference it makes on the returns that an investor would?
So like historical backtesting, that type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so backtesting would be the way to test an alpha strategy. If someone has a special insight and they're constructing portfolios to beat the market, we are not seeking alpha. We are a beta strategy, so if someone wants to see historical returns, they can just look at the S&P 500. And the way you would assess the quality of a beta strategy would be to look at the portfolio construction techniques. And we've run it through many portfolio construction experts in our network. So my co-founders spent most of the last decade at Bridgewater Associates building a lot of the key infrastructure there that led it to be the world's largest hedge fund. Our CTO built a platform that still trades all of Bridgewater's equities and derivatives. So it's billions of dollars of trades a day. We're very confident in our portfolio construction techniques, and we've shared it with many, and we're happy to share it with others.
So you're just trying to lower volatility and risk in the portfolio. That's all you're doing.
We're trying.
Beta, that's beta.
We're taking the same type of machinery that would be traditionally used to set up the same software that would be used to set up a large index fund to track a specific index, and periodically rebalance it, and we are running it in real time for each individual. Instead of optimizing it to beat the market, we're optimizing it to integrate your particular values and meet the market, if that makes sense.
Okay, we are going to have to stop with questions. And Dianne, we really appreciate the fact that you have done what you've done and gotten on the screen for us despite being so ill. So thank you very much. We will try to handle the rest of the discussion without you. so that you can actually take some medicine maybe instead of just water.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you because I really was looking forward to it, but it was nice to at least see all of you and present to you, and hopefully it's an interesting investment opportunity for you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much as well. So we're now going to do individual table discussions with each other, and I'd actually like to ask for those of you who presented, maybe you could come up here and you kind of float around, because I think if a group has a question and they'd like to ask you something, and I'll be floating around. Tony, you want to float around with me also? Maybe Lisa, you can float around too. We'll float around and we'll just try to get the right people to the right table if you have questions. And again, use the, do not forget to ultimately map Open Invest and Village Enterprise to this matrix. And if you have any questions about what to do here, again, I'll be floating around, talk to you about it. And I would suggest that you go ahead and get started with the first question. I do want to note just a couple things. One, there's no one-size-fits-all framework for looking at impact investment opportunities. So we're in no way trying to say this is the way to do this. These are just tools. Second thing is there are no wrong answers. So this is really, you discuss these things in the working group, you're going to discuss them in the tables, and it's really what you think of a particular model. And you have lots of reference pages in your packets that define the terminology that was used by Adam, by Robynn. So if you need to reference those pages, you can do so. And I think actually we're going to provide that last matrix that Adam showed as a reference sheet as well. So we'll be passing those out. But go ahead and get started. I would suggest you start with the very first question on the prompts. What strikes you as particularly appealing about the value proposition of these innovative offerings? And what questions or concerns might you have? I just want to remind you that you should have one on your sheet that looks like this. Do one circle for Open Invest in this range that's shaded yellow. One circle in this range that's white. These are the Toniic and Omidyar categories. Same thing for Village Enterprise in this column. And then take a blue sticky for Open Invest and a green sticky for Village Enterprise. You don't even need to talk to anyone about this. But think about the impact from the standpoint of to what extent is it direct impact versus market level impact, or maybe they do both. And put your green and blue stickers in whatever quadrant you think applies to those companies. So I can tell by the spirited discussion that everyone had complete consensus on how they categorize these. Did any group actually agree on either Open Invest or Village Enterprise? Did any group kind of reach agreement on how they categorize? Anyone? Okay. So I see you say you kind of agreed. Can we hear? Let's hear what you came up with. Can we hear what you came up with?
We both kind of put Village Enterprise over at the middle of the right. On the right side about middle direct impact level.
Can you hold it up?
Okay.
We both put Village Enterprise over here.
Mm-hmm. And then, did anyone reach consensus on Open Invest?
Yeah, on the line, yeah, somewhere over there.
Right here, okay. So you put Open Invest here.
No, that was Village Enterprise.
Village Enterprise here, okay.
Did anyone reach consensus on Open Invest? No? Okay, let's hear who would like to talk about what they learned in this exercise and what you felt about either of these companies then, because it seems we're going to have very different, which is not a surprise. This is impact investing. A lot of it is in the eye of the beholder. No volunteers?
That's exactly what I learned.
Thank you, Seema.
You summed it up. Thank you.
Seema, could we see what you came up with?
Yeah.
And maybe talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I did have a viewpoint that let's see, Village Enterprise has both an individual and a systemic impact.
So where would you say you have Village Enterprise?
On the far right.
Up here?
Yeah, around there. Because it has not only impacted the immediate, I mean, I'm pretty intimately aware of Village Enterprise. I know it's not only the immediate entrepreneur, but their extended family, and there's a system that is impacted by what they do to help alleviate poverty with, you know, even a small handful of entrepreneurs. And I also know that they're, you know, what they're doing is also impacting policy, it's impacting communities at an entire level. So, and they are pioneering a new model because it's completely teaching those that they impact to fish, and then, rather than giving them fish, but teaching them how to fish, and then changing things from a long-term perspective in terms of alleviating poverty. For Open Invest, I feel like tremendous impact for individual investors.
So can we see where you are on the?
Like right about here. So individual, yes, individual, they, in
So
fact,
it's
this
more
probably
like
should even be
here?
a little bit higher, probably should be a little bit higher even here.
Like here?
Yeah, I mean, those who are
Fairly
doing,
similar location.
yeah, but up higher in terms of here, but not as much systematic impact, only because I couldn't fully see. I mean, it has a systematic impact because it can influence companies to make changes, because
You
we
mean
have
market
massive.
level here, you're talking about
Yeah,
market
yeah,
level.
there is some level there, but I wasn't fully seeing the long-term view of how it might change policy or might change investing for a broader set of people, not necessarily currently focused on impact investing and that sort of thing. But I think, I mean, this is really based on this point in time of knowledge of these two companies, right, and these two investments. And I know about this much on Open Invest, and I know this much more on Village Enterprise, so that has a lot of impact to it. So I mean, it is very much art and science, and probably more art than science right now. So this could, in a week, this could change if my knowledge changes. So.
We are going to discuss this in the working group, actually. Any other comments, especially people who might be a little more comfortable who've been in the working group? Anyone want to comment about these categories? Does anyone feel comfortable with where they placed a company here? No one? Okay, Simon.
I thought, for me, Village Enterprise is pretty easy to place as an A2 investment. I felt like, I think, as SV2 members who have been with them for a while, who really believe in their model, I think we think they can do really well on this evaluation performance, and we know that, but they struggle to answer the question, what's the expected return? And I don't think their return is market validated. I don't think it's something that, it's the first development bond. I don't think it's something that market rate investors are gonna flock to and say, oh, we want this. But I think we as SV2 members have this kind of added knowledge that we think, yes, this can attain that, and we have that kind of advantage that way.
Okay. I'm wondering if Robyn and Adam want to weigh in at all on these.
I don't, I want to be in listening mode.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment?
I was curious what Joshua, how you would place your own company.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where you'd like it to go.
I'm kind of, for us, I don't know, I don't fully understand the direct level impact thing. I don't know if I fully subscribe personally to the framework as it stands. And I like being framework defined, but in our minds at our company, we're all about systems level change, market level impact. How do we not just make an impact investment, but enable millions of people to become impact investors? And how do we not just create awesome little, essentially ultra small cap companies? How do we change the entire incentives framework in which corporate America operates? That's our goal, that's our vision. But we had a short time frame, we didn't get into all that, and it's vision, so that's years out as well, so maybe you have to discount that, but that is our goal.
Yes.
I think we talked a little bit about a scale consideration. So for open investors, I really like is you see how active investors, agitators can control company direction. I think you can create a dynamic like that where ultimately enough people subscribe to this model and you're actually, it's not good business to be in something that is bad for the environment, et cetera, at the extreme case. And I think the information throttling piece is a big aspect. We talked about it, but I think if you get there, the more people you have on a platform, the better information you have, et cetera, et cetera. I think for Village Enterprise, I think because it's funded also by grants, you have to ask yourself, in the extreme situation where now you're alleviating poverty, does that mean that the service is not needed, or do you convert to another model where it's self-sustained by cash flow, whatever the case may be, that's generated by the business to expand? So what I like about Open Invest is it's more self-contained as far as the model, as long as people will use it. The Village enterprise model seems to be still dependent on external grants, et cetera, to be moving. So it's worth, I think it's a point worth bringing up. I still think that from a direct impact perspective, Village enterprise is stronger, but I think it's something to be said about Open Invest being like a self-contained model that with enough folks involved, you really don't need other parties to create the value.
I think we're done then.
Well, I just want us to, again, say thank you to our presenters tonight, to Robynn, to Adam, to Josh, and to Dianne back at home. We have some thank yous for you, so we'll give those to you before you go. And I want to mention one last learning opportunity for the year in the impact investing arena, which will be on June 7th. It's a subset of our portfolio review. So we'll be going through, with our grants and impact investing committee, all of the organizations that we've made grants to and that we have supported through impact investments. So it won't include Josh, and if we make one more investment, it won't include that committee, but the ones we made last year. And having more of a discussion like this. How's it gone? What's the engagement been with SV2? What's happening with the impact, and so on. So that's an opportunity that we invite all SV2 partners to come to. So with that, just want to say, I think I see us moving from awareness to action, and that was the goal of this session. And it's because of the great mix of people in the room, in addition to our presenters and our amazing partner leaders. Especially Lisa, I just want to, again, say thank you for all your efforts. So thank you. Thanks for being here.